It's tier list time. Hello and welcome back to the channel. LC here, and I'd like to just thank you for pressing on the clickbaity title and thumbnail to talk about everybody's topic of discussion, a tier list for Marvel's Midnight Suns. I've been grinding this game ever since it came out. I'm at about 120 hours so far with about 2 playthroughs, so I got a pretty good feel for the game. And I want to talk about where I think every character falls within the entire dynamic of the actual game. I actually had an entire script written for this, so I was like, this is going to take entirely too long. Now it's going to be like a 40-minute video. So I'm going to do it a bit differently. I'm going to kind of freestyle this just a bit because I feel like I'm pretty confident as far as what the characters do, what their weaknesses is. So we're just going to go over what they excel in as well as what their weaknesses is. Pretty straightforward. Going to keep it pretty cut and dry. Going to go through the entire list. So let's lay some quick ground rules before we get started. Number one, this is going to be predicated off the base difficulty of the game. I think that the game is playing difficulty in its current iteration, but I think that the entire characters, the roster, synergy, everything like that greatly changes the higher the difficulty goes. I think everybody would pretty much agree with that. So we'll leave that, for the future, kind of when the DLC drops. I think I'll dive into that. The second thing is going to be that the majority of these characters in this game is balanced. There's not any characters that's completely ass, completely unusable. So that being said, our scale is going to go from God tier, S tier, A tier, and B tier. So those will be the tiers that we go through for these characters. And thirdly, I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below. Let me know who you think is the best characters in the game, and not only that, where you have each character ranked. I'm really interested to see because there hasn't really been a definitive tier list, and I'm just kind of taking my stab at it. But I really want to see what the consensus is overall with the entire community. So let me know down in the comments. And while you're down there, make sure you drop us up for future Midnight Suns content. Okay, so to kick us off, we have Blade, the Datewalker. So when the game first dropped, I was kind of like really mixed about how I felt about Blade. He had some really great benefits to his entire kit, but I felt that he didn't do enough damage up front for me. But the more you start playing the game and the more you understand its mechanics, you understand just how insane Bleed is. And that kind of carries his entire kit. The fact that he has Bleed and the fact that you can put it on multiple people in one different outing just kind of makes Blade quite a very powerful character, especially when you're dealing with really tanky base characters or characters that you're going to have to whittle down over the rounds. You're not going to KO them in one round. Blade is invaluable for stuff like that. He also does have some pretty damaging attack as well with like Relentless Plus and Savage Plus. He can really do some damage, especially if they have like some of the modifiers going. He can be that guy. I don't think he really lacks anything. I just think that there are better people sometimes for the job, and that does make him a little lower on the tier list. And to close, the thing that I really like about Blade is that he's pretty self-sufficient. A lot of his attacks also have life bleed as well, so he can actually restore health without needing, to be healed or anything like that. He's pretty self-sufficient out on the field, so I have him ranked at A tier. He's that guy. And then coming in, we have our first resident for God tier, and that's going to be Steve Rogers, Captain America. One of my favorite characters in this game, just because of the way that he functions. The fact that he is like a God mode tank. I normally don't lean on a lot of tank characters when it comes to strategy games, but this is one of those rare situations where he is just that damn good. And he kind of goes a little bit against the meta of the game. The game is designed for you to clear the maps as quickly as possible. The longer that you're in an interaction, it's worse for you because reinforcements come in, a supervillain might come in and stuff like that. So you want to kind of get off the stage as soon as possible. And he kind of allows that by making sure that you're safe, by him being able to add block with Tactician Plus. And I think Dig In is one of the best cards in this game. The fact that it gives you 3 heroism, it gives you taunt for anybody that's looking at that person, as well as a counter, that is just broken. I think that he might fall off a little bit when he gets to higher difficulties because block can easily get shredded when they're hitting so hard. But for a standard difficulty, I think Cap is definitely a God tier character. He synergizes with the entire cast. He makes every single character better because he just makes them safer with his cards. And I think that he can also deal some damage with his ultimate. Ultimate Shield Plus, I think is pretty good, as well as his shield throw. He just has it all, man. This guy is just an insane character. I definitely think he's God tier. I've seen some debate about that. Let me know what you guys think. And then moving on to Carol Danvers, Miss Marvel. Now, I've had kind of a hot and cold relationship with this character. When I first did like 40% of my run, she was on every single roster, right? She was her, Hunter, and whoever you had to be with assigned. And I think she's really good, but the more I play her, the more I don't like her playstyle, if that makes sense. I don't like her cards, I don't like her deck. I don't like her deck building at all. She is an offensive powerhouse, but until she gets rolling with binary, she kind of has some issues, right? She has a few cards that do give her block, but her entire operation being predicated around block, she only has binary as long as she has block. So you want to keep her fitted out with block as much as you can. But I think that she works best with another character that can give her block, like Captain America, because out on the field, If she's drawing a lot of ire to the, doing the taunts and stuff like that, she's trying to keep the heat off the other players. If she hasn't managed to draw a card that gives her block, not a lot of her cards give her block, then you're kind of just out there, you know what I mean? Like, she's not strong enough for that binary to be out there crushing every opponent. So she's kind of in a weird situation until she gets started. But once she gets started, she's a freight train. But can be a little slow on the startup. I gotta really take a moment to kind of retool her deck. She is obviously very powerful. I have her A tier, but that could certainly change. She could either go up or she could go down. It depends. Now moving on, we have Hunter. Probably our other god tier character. This character is the Blank Slate. This is our POV into the world of Midnight Suns, and I actually think he's written pretty well, as a kind of a side note. And I think that the way that they've construed this character, with the light and the dark cards, makes him extremely versatile. He can fill every role, and sometimes I feel like he fills some of those roles better than the characters that were designed for it. Like, he can do support, he can do DPS. He was my single target DPS for pretty much my entire first run. If there was a very tanky character I needed to get out the field, it was always Hunter that took him out. He just can do it all. I love his support cards. I love the fact that he has Berserk cards. He has cards that can make enemies attack each other. He just has cards for everything. They start getting him cards for anything. Possibilities with him are so just kind of out there that there never really is going to be a wrong option when it comes to Hunter, right? You can always make him whatever you want him to be. That makes him a god tier character. The fact that he has so many options, and then on top of that, his passives. I think the fully charged passive is insane. The fact one resist or one heroism at the start of each round, that's broken. Not to count any of the other callers or anything like that. I think he's just ridiculous. Hunter, that was always going to be a god tier character just because he's a blank slate. Let me know what you guys think. And then moving on to Dr. Stephen Strange. Well, Strange, when I first got a hold of him in the story, I didn't really think much of him, right? I thought he was okay. But by the time you start to really understand what his utility is, he is ridiculous. He's like an offensive support that can also do quite a bit of damage as well. And I actually think that Doctor Strange has two of the best support cards in the game. Blessing of Ashanti as well as Agamotto's Gaze, I think, are the perfect cards for any type of offensive. If you're trying to be offensive out there, it's ridiculous. I think that's probably going to be the card that most people use for speed runs, just because it can actually technically allow you to probably do most maps in 1 or 2 rounds, just because the buffs are insane and they stack upon each other. I just think that Doctor Strange, his entire kit is extraordinarily powerful and it's very straightforward. You know what I mean? Probably the biggest drawback when it comes to Doctor Strange is that for some of his attacks, it relies on you having kind of higher heroism, it amps it up and stuff like that, but it doesn't give you an option to use a lower amount, so you kind of have to completely cash out. So, only thing I really don't like about Strange, but outside of that, he's a very straightforward but very powerful support character. I have him at S tier. I don't think there can be any argument about that. The man is goated. And then moving on, we have Robbie Reyes, aka Ghost Rider. Now, this character I used for about 60% of my first playthrough. This was my guy. The only reason I stopped using him is because he just ended up damaging himself too much, right? He is kind of like a Blood Knight. If you heard of that term, he is like a character that damages himself when he does damage to other characters. Very similar to General Vlora from Triangle Strategy. To do any of the strong attacks, you're going to damage yourself. But for his case, it's kind of worth it because some of the really tanky characters, if you need to sacrifice to get them off the field, Ghost Rider is a very good option for that. Things like Penance Stare. He's just ridiculous when it comes time to deal damage and mob control, like clearing the map. Hellride is probably one of the best attacks in the entire game. Even if it does clear out your hand, you just have to technically use it last. I just think that he has an entirely different kit, extremely aggressive. Hellmouth is a pretty good support card also. And knocking people into the hole is pretty fun as well. And that can definitely be clutch on some of these characters if you're trying to get rid of some of the tanks and stuff like that. Knock them into the hole, you can kill them maybe early, possibly. But I think that Ghost Rider is better in higher difficulties where you have to kind of risk it for the Trisket and you have to get damage on the field. I think Ghost Rider is even higher, but I have him right now A tier, but definitely a good argument for S. The only reason he's not higher in S right now is because he does damage himself. He does require a very specific comp to work with him. You need somebody to heal him or to allow him to not kill himself, essentially. So you need somebody that's going to either taunt everybody so that he's not targeted, or somebody to keep healing him over and over again. So that's kind of the draw off when it comes to Ghost Rider. Then moving on to Mr. Tony Stark, Iron Man. Now, I think that Iron Man is one of those characters that's extremely versatile. I used to use him when I wasn't using Hunter because he can kind of fill every role. The only two things he really doesn't do is outright heal. And the other thing he doesn't really do is he can't really tank super well. He does have a block, but it doesn't really do too much. He's not really designed to tank. but every other role he can fill pretty well. And I think one thing that people sleep on when it comes to him is his support cards are insane. Having a support card that straight up like doubles your heroism. If you have like 4 or 5 heroism and you draw like an ultimate, Midnight Sun card, you might actually be able to clear the entire map that round. Like stuff like that's broken. And the fact that he also has that card that can mark people and put vulnerable on them within an area is just broken. I just think he has so many good options. I think he's clearly an S tier character, but I think I could see that he might fall off a little bit in some of the higher difficulties. Not that I've ever really struggled with him in the higher difficulties. I think that the game plan does change a little bit more. You might be reliant on some of his more support options than some of his physical strength. So I have him at S tier. And then moving on to Magik. One thing I always enjoy is a good Magik show, and she never ever fails me. This is probably my biggest surprise when it comes to this game. I always thought her design was pretty cool, but the way that they realized her into this game is very impressive. Her entire move kit, and not just that, visually, I think she has some of the best animations in the game. I love the way that she can control the entire playfield. She has great offensive options. I think that Limbo's Grasp, being able to start the match off with that is extremely powerful. 176 on top of all her damage that goes through portals for the rest of the match is extremely good. I just like portals in general. You can, with all the environments and stuff like that, she is a queen of environments. No one in this game uses environments anywhere near as good as she does. And on the flip side, like one of the drawbacks when it comes to that is that she doesn't necessarily work well with other characters that need to use environments, like Scarlet Witch, Spider-Man, stuff like that. Characters that really kind of need to use the environment in order to get a lot of damage. She probably doesn't want to be teamed with them, but I think outside of that, defensively, even with Darkchild Plus is just broken, given invulnerability, and then she taunts everybody, and then she gets a counter on the Plus version. She's just entirely too good. S tier character for sure. And now we have Nico. Now, Nico is a very contentious pick for sure. I use her as my main support character, flip-flop with Strange throughout my first playthrough for most of the side missions. I think the big issue with Nico, number one, survivability. She has kind of a little bit of a lower health, and then the second part is the random nature of her cards. You're already dealing with RNG with each card hand pull, but the fact that all of her cards, they're either low, medium, or high damage, that could not always be good depending on the situation. So you can't necessarily rely on her for extremely good, consistent damage, I would say. You know what I mean? Even though she does have some pretty good damage cards, like Swarm is good, Witchfire is good. Like, she does do some damage, but it's inconsistent, and that can definitely be a problem. I do love her ultimate, though. I think Crack in the Sky is really, really good and extraordinarily powerful, but she can be the definition of inconsistent. If you don't get the cards you need for her, it hurts more than most of any other characters on this list, honestly. And I think that the fact that she has really high highs and some really low lows, like cards like Empower are crazy good, right? It can really clutch you out. But on the flip side, she can have a lot of kind of buy turns where she didn't get to do anything meaningful because you didn't get a single card that really did anything for her. And I feel like that affects her more than other characters because of the nature of her roulette and stuff like that. But I think that very solid decks can be made for her, and I don't think she's a bad character by any stretch of the imagination at all. I have her in A tier, but that's definitely going to be contentious. I can already hear people saying, I think she's worse than that, or I think she's better than that. There's people saying that she's tied with Strange. I don't think she's near that because Strange is very straightforward. He's linear as far as what his strengths are, and hers are kind of a bit more always evolving depending on what cards you get, unfortunately. So that's going to be it for Nico. Have her A tier. And now we have Wanda. Now, Wanda is probably going to be the other character on this list that's going to be kind of contentious. I can already see it. I think she's probably bottom 2 characters in the game, which is super disappointing because I love the way she looks in this game. They got my girl out there looking thick. And I think I love her ult also. And I liked her entire storyline in this game as well. And I've always thought Scarlet Witch was really cool. You know what I mean? But they do the same thing with her that they do with Strange. They always give her some gimmicky stuff, hexes and stuff like that with random natures. In this game, she has been kind of streamlined and it is a bit more straightforward, right? But I don't think her kit is good. I don't think her deck is good at all. It's way too situational. And she has really hard passes with certain characters. Like I mentioned before, some of her more powerful cards like Detonate, anything that has to kind of use environments, that means you can't really pair her with Magik or Spider-Man, which is a bit of a bummer. There are obviously other shells that she will work with, but I think that her entire kit being based for a great deal of her kit, I want to say like at least like a third of her cards are based around AoE attacks, right? Which means that she needs to be in the proximity or in order to do the damage. And granted that you can increase the proximities like 40% and stuff like that, that's good. But the issue is that you still have to move her there, or they have to be next to you, and that's not going to always be the case. So that creates problem number one. And then problem number two is that I think that some of her cards just aren't that good. I would honestly say that. It's very situational, and I think it pales in comparison to the other two characters that you'd be using for support, Doctor Strange and Nico. She does have no more, which is kind of good, you know, but it does give you a knockout. But you know, you could use that to finish matches, of course. You know, that's kind of like a panic button. No other character has that. That's very good. But I just think that there's too many issues that she has in order to be consistent. But she does have one card that does grant 4 heroism and 1 go. No other character has that I've seen. She has really high highs and really low lows. And again, I could be not utilizing her correctly. I would very interested to see what you guys have to say down in the comments about what you think her best builds are, her best cards. I already looked at a number of videos, and it all kind of boils down to the same thing. You know, she's just pretty inconsistent. And I feel with her more than any other character, the fact that her part of her kit's based off of AoEs, kind of ass. I don't like that. I wish that you could kind of put like the hex spell, you could place it somewhere, you know, if the monsters or enemies go there and then they get hex, that's fine. But the fact that it has to be right where she is, that's stupid. And then the same thing with, you know, healing your teammates, they need to be right next to you. Maybe it's not a good idea that they're right next to you. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of situations where it's not a good idea that there's somebody next to you. So she was definitely my biggest disappointment, honestly. I have her at B tier. I don't think she's unusable or anything like that, but she has some really hard like passes where I would never put these two characters together. It would be extraordinarily difficult in order to win with them. And then moving on, we have Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Man is a character that grew on me the most. I thought he was kind of ass when I first got him. When you first use him in a campaign, I was like, he doesn't really have any raw power. You know what I mean? A lot of his stuff is based off the environment. You know what I mean? Getting additional moves, getting quick and stuff like that. So it took me a long time to become a Spider-Man, a Peter Parker believer. But I am now. I think he's a very good character. But the thing with him is that it's kind of like you need to be like 3 or 4 steps ahead. You literally need to like think, okay, I'm going to do this. And then, you know, I'm going to use environment for that. Then I'm going to get the card replay, because you could easily, you know, string like 4, 5, 6 different attacks together. And if you throw his ultimate in there, you could be looking at 4 to 7, you know, card plays if you get his cards, of course. That's very impressive. But it does take a lot of foresight to understand, like, if I do this and I get quick, I can use this environment. And he does also, I think he pales in comparison just slightly to Magik. I think Magik does use environments better than anybody else. But I think a lot of his versatility comes into actually just getting the ability to use environments at a reduced cost. The fact that a lot of his cards give him quick is really good. I think that a lot of his support cards are pretty good as well. I don't think he has really too many bad cards. Offensively, you just have to rely on the environment to do a lot of damage. He doesn't have a lot of cards that are just like, all right, he's going to do a lot of straight up damage. And if you need that out of a character, he's not the one. He's not going to do that for you. But I think once you get rolling, and if you have kind of an imagination or you have foresight to say, I'm going to do X and then Y and then Z, he can work out really well for you. I think that Spider-Man is probably one of those characters that needs a while to develop with the meta and for people to really like utilize quick cards, refunds and stuff like that in order to like make this character insane. I think I have him at A tier right now, but he definitely has a potential for S. I could definitely see him going to S tier for sure. And then there was 2. Now we have Old Man Logan. Now Wolverine is probably is definitely my favorite mutant character, X-Men character of all time. Was my main character Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I have played thousands of matches with that character. That is my guy. In the long run, I was kind of disappointed with his playstyle in this game. So he is kind of like, he does a lot of like single target as well as crowd control, you know, DPS and stuff like that. As well as, you know, he can draw the ire. He does a lot of taunts and stuff like that. So he can get the enemy focus off of your teammates. But the main issue with Logan is the higher the difficulty of the game gets, the worse he gets. There's characters that can just do what he does better. It's weird to say that Blade is actually better than him in this game. Because his entire idea is, you know, single target as well as like crowd control and taunting. That's his entire shtick. But he isn't able to control like the amount of damage that he actually gets. He can easily be KO'd in 1 round. He can't actually tank the actual attention that he gets, if that makes sense. He can taunt like 4 opponents, but he might die, you know what I mean? trying to deal with all 4 opponents. And that's a problem. He does have like self-healing, and his passive is really good as well. You know, he'll like maybe 100 each round, but I think that some characters, they get rewarded much more executing the same game plan. Characters like Hulk as well as Blade, I think just do it way better than he does, and they get rewarded much more. Blade gets bleed, you know, if he gets bleed and stuff like that, that passive stacks up, and then Hulk gets rage, which we'll talk about in a second. But I think that his ability to taunt and kind of keep the eyes off your allies isn't enough if he's getting like completely beat down every single round. And if you have to burn a card every round to do his rapid healing, you know, that's one card you always have to use to heal him. That's not a good look. If you pair him with somebody that gives him block, I think that he can execute his game plan much better. As well, if you pair him with somebody that can amp up his offense. So somebody like Doctor Strange, you'll make Logan hit a bit harder. He can clear those enemies off the field much easier. I do like his ultimate as well, but it is situational. You know what I mean? I don't think that he has the tools that his peers have. I think he lacks them, honestly. And that, with a very great disappointment, makes him a B tier character. I don't think that he's better than the majority of the cast. And it's weird to say that because I really tried to make him work for a long time, like hours on hours on hours. I was like, maybe I'm doing it wrong. You know, maybe I'm doing this wrong. But I think that the way that he's constructed in this game isn't necessarily to his benefit. I think that in order for him to do what he needs to do, I think it would be beneficial for him to have some type of block, because just taking raw hits and then depending on heals, that can be problematic, especially if you get wounded or injured or something like that, or if you get bleed on you. Like, Logan's gonna die. That's gonna be a problem. So I think that's a big disappointment for me. He's still my guy. I enjoy using him. He's not unusable or anything like that. I just don't think that he executes his game plan nearly as well as the other characters. And then there was one. We have Hulk. Now, Hulk is one of the characters that definitely grew on me the most. I think when you play against him in the campaign, first off, Fallen Hulk looks fucking sick. This is one of the best interpretations of Hulk I've ever seen. I think that Fallen Hulk, that design, S tier. Now, when you actually go to play with him, you do get him kind of late in the game. So a lot of this will be predicated off of, you know, side missions and stuff like that. Not so much in the campaign. His entire play style revolves around his rage meter. So if you can get him rage early, he's ridiculous, you know, until he burns it out, of course. So the idea here is Hulk, in order for him to be a force on the field, you need to build that rage as fast as possible. So if you can get something like Challenging Roar, say that the match starts and like 2 or 3 people are looking at Hulk, you can get that Challenging Roar off really quickly. You can get some eyes on Hulk, build like 3 rage, then he's good to go. If you aren't able to build rage for any reason, he's not bad, but he's definitely underwhelming. You know, like, he doesn't hit very hard without it. He's decent, you know what I mean? He hits like the other characters. But if you build rage, he has the highest potential. He's kind of like the long game. And there's been situations where like this man was like doing counters for like 500 damage back. Once he gets going, he's incredible. But the thing is that he needs a lot. Yeah, he needs to be able to take the hits from the opponents, not die. He does have a pretty generous like HP threshold, but it is good if you can give him some type of block. Any type of block would be good, you know. So something like Captain America worked really well, you know, just so that he can take the damage, build the rage without being on life support. He does have one of the best heals in the game, but it burns all your rage. But if you can get that off once, that doubles like your HP. But if you're worried about trying to get like 3 stars or something like that, you don't necessarily have enough time to do that and then build rage back up. So that's a trade-off. If you do that, you're burning all your rage, and he's going to be hitting kind of soft, you know, for like kind of like paper towels for the rest of the match. So that's entirely up to you. But I think he is one of the biggest, highest ceiling characters in this game. I think that he has a lot of potential that he could offer for sure to any team. He does a lot of damage. I like his kits. I like his cards and everything like that. But one thing with him that I haven't explored entirely, but let me know if you do, is utilizing the stun. He does have a few attacks, I think like Mighty Blow. Any attacks that amp up based off if they're stun on the field, he's good for that, because Thunderclap. If you use Thunderclap, you know, you get like 3 or 4 enemies stun, and then like if you have cards that do like insane damage if the character's stunned. I think Hunter has a few, Blade has a few, stuff like that. That's invaluable as well. And then stun's also good for characters that try and act like the next turn, like the duplicate monster. He's really good for stuff like that. But I think he's high risk, high reward. If you can get him rolling, he's that guy. But I think towards like some of the higher end missions, like I'm doing like 35, 38, you know, plus like missions at this point on one of my save files, he can definitely get mauled and die, you know, if you're trying to like build his rage by having him take the hits and stuff like that. But you got to be careful with him. I think he has one of the highest ceilings, but I just have him at A right now. I think when he's fully figured out, I think he could easily be at S. When I say figured out, I mean I figured it out completely, because I think I have a really good game plan with him, but sometimes it really just goes bad, because if he doesn't get the cards he needs, that's not a good look, and I think that could be an issue. So that'll cap us off for the tier list when it comes to Marvel's Midnight Suns. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Again, this is all open for interpretation. I really want to know what you guys think, what you guys have for the tier list. Here's the finalized photo here. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys in the next one. LC signing out. Peace.